game, and the Miscast is the game. I am joined, as always, by my stalwart companion, MarshallOutlaw. Say hello, Marshall.
Hello.
Welcome back to the Miscast after so long. We are incredibly happy to have you back. We have a great lineup for you today. Let's go ahead and review the schedule for pretty much everybody who's new to this, because some things have changed since we were last on the air, and we'll be explaining this in painful detail for a little while here while people get accustomed to the new lineup. So this is our Wednesday episode. As always, we will be discussing our news items for the week. I will torture Marshall mercilessly with a MISQUIZ, and then don't forget to tune in for our FridAI episode later on this week, where we will be exploring all things AI in extreme detail. And then we have a little bit more of a chilled Saturday episode where we talk about the games that we've played this week. And yes, all right. So anything to add, Marshall?
No, that should be good. I suppose we can move right into your news items for the day.
I think we should do that. All right, so my first news item, a little something cheerful to start you out for the new year. A company not being a dick for once. Ubisoft is apparently provided a path for people who are losing their Google Stadia accounts because Google Stadia is stopping existing.
Yeah.
They're providing a path for people who have Ubisoft games through Google Stadia to actually get copies of those games from Ubisoft. I thought this was a nice goodwill gesture. There is like a sidebar that I also learned from this, which is that Ubisoft apparently now has its own specialty premium service called Ubisoft Plus, which I didn't know existed, and I don't know what it provides exactly.
Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't know that existed, I'll be honest.
I feel like we are slowly on the path towards every individual nature developer starting its own like personal premium game service, and I think that the universe is probably going to end when EA or Activision finally decides to jump on this bandwagon.
Oh, God knows. I mean, I feel like EA is probably always 5 seconds from deciding that they're going to make their games a subscription model. In fact, calling it now, sidebar, but I bet you the next Sims is going to either be a subscription-based or a free-to-play with some form of like subscription. I mean, to be fair, they actually recently made Sims 4 free to play, so this is not too crazy of a prediction.
I believe that, to be honest with you, because The Sims always gave me the vibe of like being for a PC game. After about 3, it really became like this merciless effort in monetization that reminds me of mobile games in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
you know what I
it
mean?
is.
Like mobile games are like designed to extract as much money from you as possible for as little pleasure as they can get away with. And I hate to say it, but that's sort of true. Like they basically don't want you to have any fun if you don't pay them for it.
Well, a lot of games do like incurred risk development, essentially, right? When they're working on post-launch content, where what they'll do is they'll go, okay, the content that we're making is going to cost us far more money than we can possibly charge customers. Like maybe they're making a whole new story content, right? However, we incur that risk because we expect this many sales. We expect for the DLC to sell this much. And when you're talking about something like Sims, it's, for better or for worse, they stopped expecting people to buy like expansion packs and whatnot reliably. So they just started coming out with kind of smaller expansion packs, stuff packs, all that smaller content with high price tags to rely entirely upon, well, whales, like in the mobile market.
Yeah,
because there's always going to be somebody who buys every copy.
I don't know, honestly, that we're getting better games as a result of this, though. Because the only way that theory makes sense, basically, it's like, okay, well, we'll basically like charge for a whole bunch of stuff to sort of pay for its development as we go. If you are doing something so fucking groundbreaking that like it needs all sorts of additional funding while you do R&D and like new code. But like, take the example of items as a really good fucking example. Maxis probably employs, I don't know, I would guesstimate a minimum of 10 or 15 professional 3D modelers at all times. I would be very surprised if their team of people who are capable of doing 3D modeling is lower than that, and texturing.
Sure.
The actual code on the back end for integrating these things, unless they were retards about the way that they actually code the game, takes like the addition of a couple of entries to a database. It probably takes a programmer who knows what they're doing 5 or 10 minutes if they haven't just found a way to entirely automate the process, which might be possible actually. Like, they are not, it is taking them almost no work and costing them almost nothing to make these. They make, if they put these things up for like $5, they make back the money it cost them to have that model made at the price that, or at the like rate that they um, reimburse their employees. They make back the money that it cost them to do that in 10 sales, if that many, depending on how fast the person is.
So I
Like,
think the math gets a little complicated. So when you're talking about a game development, the problem is when you're talking about something the size of like EA, it's probably impossible to just like over the course of lunch, you and three like software developers and a couple of like 3D render modelers and all that. Probably impossible for you to just crank out a quick stuff pack.
I'm sorry, I've just deafened our audience.
Oh, what? Don't worry, you didn't. Nothing came
Fix
through.
that in post.
Yep.
Give me a sec.
Okay.
You still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Don't worry. You've actually not done anything. You're okay. There was no sound. There was no deafening issue there, so you're all right.
That's weird. The microphone actually tipped over and started to fall off the desk.
Oh, didn't hear any of that. So you're good. But either way, I think that the fact of the matter is that when you're talking like an actual studio the size of EA, they probably have like 20 employees that they have working over the course of a week on a new piece of content, like a stuff pack or something that they're going to charge like $20 for, which is fine. It's just that if they're being paid like generously, something like $35 an hour, which they're probably
They are
not.
not.
Salary.
They are not getting paid that.
No, they're probably not. They're probably being paid closer to half that. But the point is, you know, they release the pack.
Probably make like 15 or
probably. The point is, they still have to release. They still have to sell to at least like something like 500, 600 people just to get that immediate return. And that's not even including server costs and whatnot. Which factor that in, you're probably talking a couple extra hundred sales, honestly. But they're probably
except the actual database, because they have to maintain those servers anyway, so it's not like the entire cost of the server is falling on the backs of those things. The wear and tear on the server is negligible, and the actual size of these things on disk is probably like, I don't know, maybe generously 500 megabytes. Like, it's just they're not that big.
I think part of it is it's partially like the Netflix model, right? Where you just keep releasing stuff to pay for the things you've already made and invest in the things you're about to make, but you never really have money. You're just you just have investments that you're paying in and out of constantly.
If EA doesn't have money, then they are like running their business in a very silly way.
I don't think it's that they don't have money. I think that they probably get most of their back ends, like most of their profits are probably on people buying the like older stuff packs, expansion packs, whatnot, especially when they go on sales. Right? I think that very few people, like I think that they to break even on all fronts and probably be sustainable, they probably want something like 1,000 sales of their new content when it comes out within the first like month. And they probably get closer to like maybe 200 is going to be my estimation. I think that the majority of people don't grab it. I think there's probably about 100 YouTubers that do grab that content when it comes out because they're literally Sims YouTubers. That is their whole job, right? But
I would be very surprised if their sales figures are only in the hundreds. I think it would probably be economically viable, but I think that they're making a lot more money off this than you think. I would guess I would guess that their sales figures are probably closer to minimum like single thousands.
I think it gets higher as time goes on. I think by the end of the first year, whatever that content was probably has sold well into the thousands, right? Because at that point, maybe somebody who's a casual fan, and I think this is also part of the trick, right? Is someone goes, well, I'm not sure I want this brand new content, but this older content's like, 20% off, It's a year old, still kind of new. I guess I'll grab that. Like, yeah, sure, it's like, 20 pieces of content behind, but in a weird way, that means it's proven and tested. Right? I think there's
I don't know. I would recommend everybody in our audience in general just not buy piecemeal DLC of this type ever, under any circumstances, for any reason.
no,
Unless
I
somebody,
agree.
I guess that's not true. There's one circumstance where I can imagine doing it. If you have someone holding a gun to your head who hands you $1 million and says you must waste it in the stupidest way possible or they will shoot you, absolutely buy DLC piecemeal. In every other conceivable situation, don't do it. It just encourages some of the worst business practices in the gaming industry.
Of which there are many.
Of which there are many. And like the games that give themselves over fully to it are awful. And if they don't start out awful, they become awful. I watched as like my old copy of Sims 3 slowly over the years, as updates were pushed by Maxis, went from an okay, if occasionally mediocre game to an unplayable one. Because literally it is now just so pushy about trying to get you to buy shit that you can't do anything without it shoving an advertisement in your face. It is like the worst mobile games. The very worst, most predatory mobile games that you see. The ones that you download, open, play for 2 minutes, realize that they are basically just giant cash grabs, close and delete. That's what The Sims 3 has turned into as a direct result of pushing this marketing practice. So I would strongly recommend that you not support companies that do this and do not purchase things this way so that they will learn to stop doing this and stop doing it.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I mean,
supposing you can teach anything to a major megacorp, which at this point is questionable.
yeah, I mean, like the whole Stadia Fallout, for instance, has been an interesting litmus test for developers. Like, how do they handle it? And like
that whole thing is like another. I mean, I didn't even get into that, but that's a whole other like side to this. Like this, Stadia isn't the first one of these at all.
no.
Like,
If anything, ironically, Luna is apparently something you'll be able to get access to Assassin's Creed or whatever Ubisoft games you have gotten through, and Luna, I think, is older than Stadia.
Yeah, I think so. Stadia had a very short, like, time or lifespan, but like, I don't know. It's kind of one of the, so far it seems like what is it like Microsoft Gaming, Xbox Gold, or whatever the fuck it is.
Games Pass.
Games Pass, that's it. Is like the premier one of these sort of this type of service that's out there. And I've actually heard some people who are I was looking into it, honestly. I was seriously considering getting it, but somebody pointed out that the fact that they are like priced so aggressively against competitors and etc. indicates that Microsoft probably is not running it currently with the intention of actually like making money off it. They're trying to get additional market dominance. And there's a probability that once they have market dominance, this being Microsoft, I mean, this would be true of any company, but Microsoft in particular has a notable history of doing this. Once they have market dominance, they are not at all afraid to abuse being a monopoly. They do it almost every time they get the ability to.
Yeah. No, Ubisoft has interesting PR and terrible business practice. I mean, when Notre Dame got burnt up, for instance, they released Unity for free for a while because, well, Notre Dame was fully modeled in Unity. It literally gone to Notre Dame and modeled it out for the game, which is dedication, I admit. But
kind of cool. I mean, it's not the stupidest PR move I've ever heard.
no. I mean, the thing is that Ubisoft has made some pretty good PR moves over the years. They've made some horrendous ones. I mean, we're not that far off. Let's keep in mind, this is the same company who's like, oh yeah, if you have these Stadia games, you can get free copies on these other platforms. This is the same studio that 100% in the past year shut down its servers for its older games, which in some cases locked you out of single-player DLC.
That's fucked. That's the other
Yeah,
problem is if they sell you DLC and then take away access to it. And in general, the fact that like software companies treat it like it's acceptable to sell you something and then take it away from you is
pretty bad.
a
Well,
problem.
and Stadia is like the poster child of that going forward, I think. Like, we're
Mhm.
selling you a thing and goodbye.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, that's the sort of thing that used to be associated in like olden days with a person who, when they were caught, would be tarred and feathered. Like
yeah,
somebody who like sells you something that breaks or is defective and they've hidden it or etc. That's the sort of thing that we associate with people who like leave town in the middle of the night so that like the sheriff doesn't find them, guys. Like
yeah.
take note. This is dangerous fire to play with. Um, but in any case, do we have any other things to say about this? Do we have time for my second news item? Do we want to just move on to torturing you?
Well, you know what? I'll let you look at the second news item, but I will give you 1 minute to talk about it briefly. How about that?
Okay, I only need 1 minute. All right. So I put this in here just because this is like article basically geeking out about monitors that were released this year. Two monitors in here struck my eye. One of them is basically square. It's a 16 by 8 monitor. I think if you were building a
Huh?
back computer and you wanted like that sort of grid appearance with the like tiled monitors, that would be the perfect monitor for doing it. And that's now part of my plans for a supervillain layer. The other thing is it has the ginormous 55-inch curved monitor that was released this year. And I will be honest, if I win the lottery, there will be signs in the form of me buying several of those. Like
Oh,
many of them. Many of them. I'll have them all over the house.
oh, okay. Well then, all right. Uh, yeah, I don't really have much more to say on monitors. I still have a couple of old HP monitors that I've been lugging around for probably 8+ years now. So, you
He's
know,
gonna hang back and monitor the situation.
time for the MISQUIZ. Woohoo! Yeah. All
Time to
right.
torture Marshall. Marshall Outlaw, welcome to the Miss Quiz. Here is your first question. Some games get sequels after a ludicrous period of time. One of the longest waits was W, Battletoads, 26 years. A, Duke Nukem Forever, 18 years. S, Doom, 20 years. Or B, Galaga, 41 years.
I don't think Galaga is going to be pretty cool. That being said, I believe confidently, I'm pretty sure Battletoads is getting a sequel here.
I am surprised that you knew that, but yes, that is correct. Battletoads is, in fact, getting a sequel. I did not know this until I went
I
looking for this question.
I watched it. It was announced last year at the Game Awards. There was a small trailer for it. And I was like, huh, that's a very dead franchise, but sure.
It's funny because it's a franchise that basically like is notorious for having been specifically created as a way of sucking money out of like small children.
Like
Um
most arcade games,
like
to be
most
fair.
arcade games. Yeah, true. Martial Outlaw, the first Pong style video game, was created by W, a college student in his dorm in the 1960s, A, an electrical engineer at his job in the 1960s, D, a physicist in a lab in the 1950s, or S, a hobbyist in his garage in the 1950s.
Oh, wow, okay, this is pretty dick move. You know what? I'm just gonna rip it, physicist.
Wow. Fucking. Completely fucking correct. I was caught off guard by the fact that the person was a physicist. It was, in fact, a physicist in an English lab. And the game was called, I believe, Tennis for Two. Yes. It used
Oh,
an
I do remember that.
oscilloscope. It used an oscilloscope as a
Yep.
screen.
Yep. I actually vaguely remembered that. If you recall, during our test recordings, I did have a question that vaguely implied like it wasn't Pong, but some other game being developed on like an oscilloscope. So, and that's because I vaguely remembered Pong was originally made on such. So
That was this game. Yes.
yeah. Anyway, so that brings us on to, well, I'm already doing pretty good.
Yes. Fuck you.
Okay.
Martial Outlaw, something unique to the first run of Undertale is W. Toriel does not know your favorite flavor of pie. A. Sans does not know if you have the locket. D. Sans does not reference the last character you flirted with. Or S. Flowey is not aware you can save your game.
I have not played Undertale. I don't know what is going on with this one, but the only Sans. Here's my logic. I think the pie one is possible in a weird way, but I think it's probably a misdirect. I think that the locket is also possible, but I think that there's if you did this a second run or first, like I can't imagine that if you did it a second run, suddenly him knowing you have the locket matters. I mean, we did discuss, characters knowing more. I don't think that would be it. Flirted with, I'm just discarding that one. I think it's Flowery is not aware you can save your game. Probably wrong, but I'm going for it.
Yeah, no,
Sure.
that's very wrong. It was, in fact, the pie. Yeah, if you ask her, or she will ask you the first time you play the game, she's like the first character you encounter. She will ask you the first time you play the game what your favorite flavor of pie is. The second time you play the game, she just has a funny feeling that your favorite flavor is the one that you specified in the first run. Um,
So
the
if you specified that your favorite flavor was dead mice and computer chips, she would just
that's
have a funny feeling that was your favorite flavor the second time.
she doesn't give you the option of selecting dead mice and computer chips because it's not a fill in the blank type question. But I guess
Ah,
yeah, she would probably otherwise remember that. Um,
no.
Otherwise of note, Sans does not know if you have the locket. So I was actually hoping you knew more about the game than you do, in the
Not
sense
a
that the
thing.
locket is apparently an item that you can only get when you're doing a genocide run.
I think
So
thankfully we've passed the generational point where this would be a thing for people, but Undertale was made by a guy who made it while in the basement of the guy who made Homestuck or something like that.
I'll put it like this, Marshall. I'm not saying that I'm gaming the algorithm, but I am saying this nice long juicy segment about Undertale means that we can now put this in our keywords.
Yeah, wow, what oh man, look down there, viewer, look on down there. Undertale, wow, you should watch this video. Undertale.
and and if we get salt in the comments, good. Controversy is the best advertising.
Oh sure, that brings us on to the next one, eh?
Marshall Outlaw, your next question. The first multiplayer online video game is thought to be W, P2P A, multi-user dungeon, MUD, D, RuneQuest, or S, Codebreaker.
Okay, fair enough. I don't know what the hell I'm looking at. I don't know. I like mud.
Fuck you.
Yay, mud.
It is MUD. That's correct. The multi-user dungeon is like a fantasy text-based adventure game coded by college students in their spare time to play on ARPANET, the
See,
precursor to the internet.
honestly, my figuring was that you wouldn't have put multi-purpose dungeon mud if it were a fake game, because if it were a fake game, you would have just put either multi-purpose dungeon or just mud.
The sequel to multi-user dungeon was called MAD and was actually accessible from the World Wide Web, not just
Oh,
ARPA, not just
oh.
ARPANET. I just like the idea that like ARPANET was originally developed basically by defense contractors, if I recall correctly, And it's like, oh, it's this big. It's like the super, like, secret government, or not
Yeah, this
secret, but
allows
like
people to connect
it's
over
like
the
this
globe.
it's this super government project, except it's still being run by computer nerds who play D&D in their spare time. So like you leave them in the vicinity of this thing and they're like, what if I put D&D on this though?
Yeah, the fact that that unequivocally the internet was really meant as essentially a wartime communications device, and that didn't come to pass, is always going to be hilarious. But
Yeah.
uh,
Okay, Martial Outlaw. Next question. The first commercial video game ever released exclusively for Linux was W, Shadowgrounds, A, Voltly, D, Lumu, or S, Penguin.
a Linux gaming question, huh? Bit of a dick move, but you know what?
No, no. Now that the Steam Deck is based on Linux, this is fair game.
That is not how that works. But you know
That
what?
is
I'm gonna
exactly
guess. I'm gonna guess Penguin.
Penguin is a thing that I made up by mashing together the mascot for Linux and the precursor for Win. I like to imagine that if Penguin existed, it would be a competitor to Wine.
Okay,
Uh,
well, two things on that. In fairness to me, the only Linux game I ever really played back in the day was literally a penguin sledding game. I remember that very distinctly.
Bingo, yeah, but that was
Bingo.
that post dates this.
Secondly, in all fairness, Linux cannot shut up about their penguin.
They can't. They really can't. You're not wrong about that. Linux is fucking in love with Pingu.
They fucking
There
love Pingu.
is probably Pingu hentai out there.
They
Know that it exists for sure.
For being like the third operating system tier wise in terms of like, oh, you got your Apple, you got your PC. Nobody is more obnoxious about their mascot than Linux. Like, you don't see.
Apple's mascot is a piece of fruit.
Yeah, they don't really do much with that shit.
It's pretty hard to be fucking gung ho about a piece of fruit, no matter how into Apple you're. Like Apple users are into Apple, but they're not actually into apples.
Yeah, but
Like,
they're not.
they're not.
Yeah, they don't call their shit. You know, they're not
see
like,
Apple
oh, this is
users.
our red delicious promotion. Like what?
Yeah, you don't see Apple users like standing in the fucking like supermarket posing with apples, wereas Linux users absolutely, if they come across a plushie in a store, will take a selfie
Every time,
100% of the time, and
100%.
that will probably continue to be true of the Linux community until it stops being quite such a niche market, which now it actually has a chance of doing thanks to Steam.
The
To be
Steam
honest.
Deck. Yeah,
But
not wrong.
no, it was in fact Voltly. I was stunned at the fact that there have ever been like releases that were designed exclusively for Linux and not to run on like Windows or Apple that were commercial releases. Because like Linux is, as you know, very freeware oriented. So the fact that a company would bother to develop something for Linux is mind-boggling. Although to be fair, Red Hat Linux and things like that sell support for the Linux like distribution that they sell you, so or they give you. So like you get the distribution, but then you have to pay to actually set it up, basically. So I guess there's a precedent for it, but still, just wild to me.
Yeah,
All right.
fair enough.
So Marshall Outlaw, your final question today.
Okay.
The first known electronic tic-tac-toe game for double points was W, NIM, A, OXO, D, Knots and Crosses, or S, Birdie the Brain.
I think XOXO is too obvious. I'm actually gonna go controversially with NIM. Damn it.
NIM was an entirely different game besides tic-tac-toe. It is a real game that ran on a computer called, believe it or not, Nimrod.
Of course. Right, of course, because geeks made it.
But yeah, no, it's true. But NIM is actually not, in fact, one of the electronic tic-tac-toe games. The only two real ones on this board are OXO, but OXO post-dates Birdie the Brain, which was a custom-built computer specifically for playing tic-tac-toe that was presented at like an exhibition in Britain. Britain
Uh,
comes up a lot today, and because Britain comes up a lot today, D is actually just what the British call tic-tac-toe, knots and crosses.
Is that actually a thing? Because you're one of the few
That's a
people I
real
know
thing.
that calls zeros knots.
They call zeros knots. Yeah, that's actually real.
Yeah,
That's
right.
the British term for tic-tac-toe.
Well, fair enough, I guess. Well, that brought me to 300 points, so I get 6 slots on the wheel this week. That's pretty good. That's not
All
terrible.
right. So yeah, you have 6 slots on the wheel. I have 8 slots on the wheel. And tomorrow, or really I should say on Friday, we will be spinning the wheel of winners. So I am statistically favored to win this week, but the way the wheel of winners works is anybody could win. So don't forget to tune in on Friday in order to find out whether it is MarshallOutlaw, me, or an evil AI that will take over the world.
Exactly.
Do
Concerning.
you have any closing thoughts?
No. Just remember to tune in for our Friday and Saturday episode. We will have a little surprise on Saturday to tell you all about. But other than that, catch our Monday episode as well, and we will see you this coming Friday.
See you next time, folks.
See ya.